Hi, my name is Michael Sinder, and Wash U taught me to pursue your passion and keep an open mind.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the PAD Podcast. My name is Rob Morgan. I teach set design, not sound design, at Washington University in St. Louis as a member of the Performing Arts Department faculty. And I'm very excited to bring you an episode with Michael Sinder. Michael Sinder is an entertainment attorney practicing predominantly in live theater. His professional career of over 30 years includes practicing law with entertainment firms, serving as the in-house lawyer for a team of Tony Award-winning Broadway producers, and working as a theatrical agent, as well as serving as the manager of labor relations for the Broadway League. He has clients that include new and established producers, co-producers, executive producers, investors, not-for-profit theaters, rights owners, authors, and conceivers, and even creative team members like myself. He's very, very generous to pay it forward, as we like to say, to students to kind of articulate just one of many, many, many options when it comes to careers in the entertainment field that do not involve acting and singing. So with that, please enjoy this episode with Michael Sinder. All right, my guest today on the PAD podcast is Mr. Michael Sinder. Am I saying your name right, I hope?
Yes.
Michael Sinder. Thank you so much for joining the PAD podcast. I'm just delighted to have an opportunity to chat with you today.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate you inviting me to come along. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I heard about you. Full disclosure, I heard about you from my good friend and colleague, Sean Savoy. He teaches lighting design here, and he's teaching a business of entertainment class, which just premiered, to use a theater term, I guess, just premiered this semester. And I just guested in that class today. It's a great, great class. So he connected me with you and said that you went to Wash U and that you were willing to be a guest subject on the PAD podcast. So I'm super grateful for your time. I guess I want to start, as we often do, with kind of your origin story, that you found your way to Wash U here, both undergrad and grad. But if you talk a little bit more about your upbringing and your exposure to the arts, specifically theater, I think the listeners would love to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to talk about that. Yeah, I grew up outside of New York City in Livingston, New Jersey, and my mom is the one who got me to become a huge fan of the theater. And like a lot of kids, I thought I wanted to be an actor. And for a while, my parents were very supportive of that. And when I was young, I think about 8 years old, from the time I was 8 till about 12, I attended this, acting school in Manhattan, which was a bit of a schlep for my mom to drive me in from our suburb in New Jersey into the city. But I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I was in a couple of, nothing on Broadway, but there were a couple of sort of smaller shows in New York that I was in as a child actor.
Nice.
And so, but that really, and I we brought my mom brought me in, both my parents brought me in and my brother to see Broadway shows quite a bit.
Mm.
Um, and I just loved it. And I remember my very first Broadway show was the original production of A Chorus Line.
Oh, wow.
And then it just took off from there.
That's
And
fascinating.
in my mind, I always sort of had it in my head, like, I would love to work in this business somehow.
Hmm.
I didn't know how. It wasn't until many years later, it wasn't until after law school where I really figured out, carved out a little niche for myself and found a way to work in the theater community. But, I knew early on that I didn't really have what it takes to be an actor on stage. But what I
Well, when you
learned
have a
over
bar
time,
like the chorus line to judge yourself by, that's a high bar, wouldn't you say?
yeah, yeah. But one of the great things I learned over time, and this is one of the things I would love for all of your students to know if they don't already, which is if there's a particular industry that you love, like in my case, theater, there are so many. What I learned over time is that there are so many ways to work in the theater industry. There's so many careers. There are things that people do that as a kid and even into as a college student I had no idea. I didn't even know what a theater entertainment lawyer really was
Sure.
until I really started doing it myself, and so there and now that I'm in working in the business and so connected to this theater community in New York, and I mean, there are people who work in the business, press agents and
Yeah.
and general managers and people who handle marketing and now social media and not to mention all the other people behind the scenes, casting agents, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, there's just a ton of careers in
Yeah.
this business, and,
Thousands of them,
book
it seems. Yeah. I
book
mean, the
touring booking agents. And yeah, I mean, I went to wash u and I which was, it's only because at my high school in New Jersey, wash u sent people out and they
oh,
did a whole presentation. And
nice.
now, I mean, I understand. So that was quite a while ago, but I
Sure, sure.
understand that wash u gets a lot of students from the New York area
We
now.
do. We do.
Um,
Quite a few from New York, Connecticut, that area. A lot of, sometimes I just poll my own students in my classes. I have classes anywhere from 80 students down to like 8 students. And yeah, quite a few are from the Northeast, from that area. We do quite a bit of recruiting in that area. So
yeah,
I want to add though, I think as a designer myself and one that designs mostly regionally, I don't do a lot of New York work. Someone like you in your position is so important to someone like me, that you represent creatives. I had a young man in a class once who was late to class. And I said, well, where were you, Mark? Where were you? And he said, I'm sorry, I was running late from my intellectual property law class. And at first, I started to say, why are you taking that class? And then I stopped myself and I said, that's brilliant that you're taking that class. So, like you said, there are so many ways in to being, entertainment adjacent, however you want to say it. So you can still, I don't know if the word is scratch the itch, but you can still sort of have this experience and this life in the arts and still practice what you, in your case, entertainment law, and representing creatives like myself. It's just so important. So I have to just say that it's people like you allow me to do and allow a lot of my colleagues to do what we love. So
yeah,
for
yeah,
that,
yeah.
for
No, it's that is true. And intellectual property, that's a fantastic class for anyone. I mean, that's an important thing for people to know, even if
sure,
it's just sort of the broad strokes, the basics. I do represent, artists, like you said, rights owners, not so much designers, but I represent a lot of authors and other sort of, rights owners in the theater world.
sure,
And one thing that's unique about theater that's different from, let's say, film and TV, for the most part, there's always exceptions to the rule, but in the world of theater, the playwright, whether it's a dramatic play or a musical and where you have book, music, and lyrics, but the playwright owns the copyright. They own the intellectual property in the work that they've created.
of
In the
course,
TV and movie world, it's the studio, the film studio or television studio that, sort of buys out and owns the work.
everything, yeah.
Um, and in theater, it's the playwright. And so the way the deals are structured in the theater world is very different. But that's
Absolutely.
an important that's really an important thing for people to understand, anyone who sort of works in the business, I think. That's essentially what I do boils down to, depending on who I'm representing, either I'm representing the person who is granting rights or the person who's acquiring rights. In
Of course.
addition to representing creatives like authors, I represent a lot of theatrical producers.
Hmm.
And really my work is almost exclusively in the world of commercial theater,
Got it.
Broadway and off Broadway, and touring shows and shows in London on the West End.
It's
But
amazing.
so I represent, in the case of a producer, I'll represent the party that wants to acquire
Of
the
course.
the rights from the author. And then bunch of other stuff that I handle, but
Yeah.
that's a big part of it, the intellectual property side of it.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And I again, whether you're representing the producer or the writer, whatever it might be, I mean, I appreciate the fact that your goal is to make sure everyone gets a fair shake, and so that's important. But I skipped over your whole WashU career.
Yeah.
I think it's so great that you remember, and I find this true of almost anyone I speak to, that they remember the first show they saw. And you saw Chorus Line. Do you have any recollection of like roughly how old you were? Was it maybe 10? Like how old were you?
It was about 10.
That's
Well, I want to say it was in about 1977 or 78. Yeah, so I,
sure,
I
sure.
I I would have been about 10 years old. Yeah.
Nice, nice. I've had the immense honor to interview Robin Wagner, who designed that before he
Yeah.
passed away, and his daughter was involved on the call, on a Zoom call, much like this one, to help us with the tech aspect, and we actually asked her. She more or less said, from the age 5, she was sitting in the front row of a rehearsal for Hair. Like it was just, she literally kind of grew up with not just her dad, of course, who was this legendary designer, but raised by fellow actors and creatives and just grew up in the theater quite literally.
Yeah.
But so you found your way through some WashU recruiting, which we still do in the New York area. Your way to WashU. What was your initial interest, at least as an undergrad? Like, take me back to your first year on this campus.
Yeah. Well, and I was not in the performing arts
Sure.
department at WashU. I was sort of a general liberal arts, arts and sciences student, and I majored in psychology, and which was great. I mean, I loved it. I really am a strong believer in a broad liberal arts education. I mean, WashU taught me so much. I mean, learning how to collaborate and cooperate with with other students, learning how to really listen, which I think is really a lost skill, and it's so important, and knowing how to listen to your, whether it's a work colleague or a fellow student, and knowing that people, I mean, this is just important in the world today, the world we're living in, and I think this would help I think resolve a lot of issues. But the idea of perspective, I think, is so important. And I learned that a lot of that I learned being a student at WashU, meeting people who come from different parts of the country and different backgrounds, and but you're in classes with these people, and you need to work together on group projects. Different people can look at the same set of circumstances and sort of have a different take on it depending on their perspective on it. And that's something that you learn in theater too. I mean, that's an important lesson from that's one of the great things about theater. I think that it can really get people to think about life.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I often tell students I'm interested in, as much as I'm interested in producing the show and affecting change, at sort of a storytelling, a sort of a crucible of space for storytelling is what a theater play could be. I'm as equally interested in the conversations, not that I ever get to hear them on the car ride home. Like how did we do? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
did people pick up on some subtleties, some themes that we hoped that they would? But I agree totally that a well-grounded arts and sciences background like you had here is very important. So you came in as a psychology major, yes? Your intent?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it was psychology, and again, I had this interest, love, I would say love of theater, but I didn't study theater as an undergrad.
Sure.
Still in my mind, I wanted to work in the business. I didn't know how I was going to get my foot in the door, and I stayed at WashU for law school. I went straight right after graduating undergrad, went straight to law school at WashU.
Hmm.
Now they have this beautiful new law school building. When I was there, it was, I don't know if you ever saw the old law school building, but it was like a really ugly
Oh.
concrete. The new building is beautiful. So after law school, it wasn't until after law school that I, without really having any connections, didn't know anyone in the theater world,
Sure.
but just by sort of reaching out and sending my resume out to everyone in the business,
Yeah.
producers, general managers, law firms, anyone. And the way I first got my foot in the door in the theater world in New York was an organization called, well, now called the Broadway League,
Hmm.
but at the time it was called the League of American Theaters and Producers. the Broadway League is much easier to say. Um, and they hired me, and as you know, to work in their labor relations department. I was basically negotiating the because world of Broadway theater is very heavily unionized.
Yeah,
There, the Actors Equity and the Musicians Union and the stagehands and the
of course.
SDC and the the local union, the designers union. And so, on behalf of the producers and theater owners, I was negotiating the collective bargaining agreements with the various unions. That was my first job in the theater world.
Oh,
And as a result of that, I just made all then a whole bunch of doors opened up to me, and I met, people in the industry and moved from one place to another. Sorry, I could go on. Am I?
that's no, this is great. This is great stuff. So would you say that you're about 25 at this point, or maybe mid 20s ish, that you got this job and this role that kind of opened doors for you?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, yeah. And then what happened for you? So did you I know that you launched your own firm, but it wasn't until sort of more recently that you've done that, I guess maybe 10 years ago or so.
Yeah,
Um,
a little bit more than that. I think I'm now into year 13 with
okay.
my own law practice, which I started. I think it was in yeah, it was in
Hmm.
2014. I shouldn't say I think. I know it was in 2014. But so prior to that, I kind
Yeah.
of jumped around a bit. I worked for a little bit at a small little boutique entertainment law firm. I worked at the William Morris agency, as an agent
Yeah.
for a short period of time.
Got it.
I worked as an in-house lawyer for a couple of different Broadway producing teams.
Hmm.
And then, like I said, then I decided to go off on my own and
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
my own law practice, which I love. I mean, it was a little scary at first taking that jump to start my own business,
Oh,
but
of course.
it's just been fabulous. And I have to say, the theater community, and this is not just in New York, you work I mean, I just think the people who work in the theater world, whether you're in New York or anywhere in the world, it's a very supportive group
Hmm.
of people. It's a great community of people for the most part. Maybe there are
Yeah.
some exceptions, but
Of
but
course.
yeah,
It's true. It's the
yeah,
high tide rises all boats kind of concept. I know that a
yeah,
lot of us just really appreciate and celebrate our colleagues when they do well, and great for them when they do, and hopefully they do the same for us when we have a good break or something.
exactly,
Um,
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so you're
Um,
not only professionally kind of in the middle of it, but if I understand correctly, you're also geographically right in the middle of the theater district, if I'm not mistaken. Like can you roll out your door and see a Broadway show anytime you wish, or where are you situated
Yeah,
geographically?
I am right in the theater district.
I
Well,
love it.
no, it's a great location. I have a small office right on at the end, sort of the northern end of Times Square,
Uh-huh.
51st and Broadway. I look out my window and I can see the ball drop on New Year's Eve.
I love it.
Um, Yeah, no, it's a great. I mean, look, I actually try to avoid walking directly through Times Square because of all the tourists.
Of
But
course.
I'm so glad that all the tourists are here because they keep us in business.
That's definitely true. It's a double-edged sword, I suppose. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So you're kind of you've found yourself on this journey, and you've made a name for yourself in this world. What have you, in that experience, what have you learned along the way? What are some, I don't know, some pearls of wisdom that a young student, a young Michael Sinder might want to hear, at a very young age, at beginning a career at WashU, or a time to spend here at WashU?
My words of wisdom are it's so important to enjoy what you do. I mean, whatever that might be, but
Mm,
if you pursue your passion is I guess what I would say. And from my own experience, knowing that I somehow wanted to work in theater but didn't know how, and eventually found my way. And I guess my other piece of advice is keep an open mind. I mean,
hmm.
just be aware that there probably are careers and jobs out there that you may not even be aware of.
Sure,
And again,
sure.
I know that was the case for me. And so don't give up is I guess what I'm saying. keep pursuing and work in a field that makes you happy. And this, I give this advice to students, and I tell my own kids this. I mean, you spend so much time in your work life and you want to enjoy what you're doing. Obviously, you still need to, I mean, making money is important. You have to be able to support yourself. You want to be
Of
able to
course.
make a living and you have to pay your expenses. But my advice is, keep pursuing your passion, keep talk to people,
Hmm.
to whoever, anyone you can, people who work in the industry. And even if it's not someone who will might directly be able to, help you get a job somewhere. But you
Yeah.
never know from talking to people where that might lead or who they might know. Each person you talk to might know one or two or five or 10 other people, and they might be able to, it just
Yeah.
keeps growing and you
Yes.
make those connections and you start networking
Absolutely.
and it will lead to something.
Yeah, yeah. I do this workshop for students sometimes. I'm actually have one queued up to do this October, where we use a book called Designing Your Life, and students do a mind map, which is a very kind of, I guess, a design thinking kind of way of prototyping a potential career. It's very kind of free association with yourself. And then the second step of that is exactly what you're talking about. It's called Odyssey planning. And you may not know the connections that even your friends have that could, you could help leverage into what it is you want to do. I have this question for you because and maybe you've already answered this another way, but I want to kind of drill down on it. So you got to Wash U and you weren't involved in PAD necessarily, and then but you knew it in the back of your mind from your, growing up watching Broadway shows and things that you wanted to somehow be involved. Was there an aha moment for you, an epiphany of sorts, or was it sort of maybe a slow percolating thing that you realized, hey, I can do both. I can be a lawyer in the entertainment industry and kind of scratch both itches, if that makes sense.
For me, it was a more of a slow percolating thing.
Yeah,
But that's another good point for current students to keep in mind is everyone kind of has their own career path. And I'm happy to talk about mine. And that's why it's so important to talk to a lot of different people and find out what they did. And
sure.
keep in mind that you could talk to 100 people and they could each have sort of had their own way of finding their career. And that doesn't mean that none of those might be the same way that you're going to find your career.
Right.
you know for me it was slow percolating. Like I said, I didn't, after I sort of gave up on acting as a child and then I found my way to WashU undergrad, and I wasn't involved with the performing arts department at WashU. I think maybe just as a patron, I think I
Cool.
went to see some of the WashU shows,
Yeah.
that were performed, but I wasn't involved in putting them on,
Mm.
in any capacity. And it was even during law school. I went through law school. I took all the required and even elective law school classes that you have to take to learn about contracts and intellectual property and tort law and real estate law,
Sure.
bankruptcy law. And like it wasn't until after law school where it really just sort of on my own, I decided to just write, these letters. Like I said, I got a whole. Well, here's a tip, which your students
Hmm.
probably already know about this. Or the theatrical index is a
Hmm.
fabulous resource. It used to only be in print version. Now it's online. You can do both, and it's a little pricey, but it's worth the cost for someone who wants to get in the theater business.
Hmm.
The theatrical and the theatrical index is really what led me to first get my foot in the door in the theater world. It's basically like sort of do you know the theatrical index?
I do.
It's
Yes.
it's
Uh-huh.
sort of
Yeah.
like a phone book
Yeah.
for the theater industry, and it comes out, I guess, every week. I think it's every week, but you don't need to look at it every week. You could look at it like once a month,
Sure.
and it lists, for every show on Broadway and off Broadway and touring around the country, and it lists regional theater productions and shows that are in the pipeline that are planning to come
Yep.
to Broadway, and for every one of those shows it lists the names and often the contact phone numbers of the general manager, the producers, the casting agent. It just is chock full the names and contact information for like everyone that works in the business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's just terrific. And so I took the theatrical index and I just wrote to everyone.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. There's like an online digest, I guess you call it, that I get once a week called Nothing for the Group. It's written by a terrific writer named Lauren Halverson. And Nothing for the Group is a reference to, after a preview performance, like you go around department by department. And, if you have nothing to add, props wise or scenic wise, you can say nothing for the group. We've got
Hmm.
other people I need to contact directly. And so, but it's a great way to look at who's directing what, at least regionally, who's directing what at what theaters and the seasons that theaters have announced recently and things like that. For
Yeah.
me, it's a way to kind of quickly go, oh, that director I like to work with or want to work with maybe is doing a show maybe right here in town and I didn't even know it. I should try to reach out to
Yeah.
see if,
Yeah.
So, it's I don't know if your mom ever said this to you, but my mom always used to say, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." And the theatrical index is a great way to network because that's what this is a very human based, collaboration based,
Yes.
contact based industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is true. Yeah.
Nice. I'm curious to know like what shows have you seen recently? I know in the work that you do, you must have seen shows. Are there any ones that you'd highly recommend for let's say one of my students that's heading home for let's say fall break to see a show? Is there one that you've seen maybe that's
Well,
still running?
yeah, well, recently, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you this in terms of what's, running here in New York on Broadway. I mean, last season, in my opinion, was one of the best we've had in a long
Wow.
time. I really think there was some okay. So, I mean, I loved, and I'm not involved with this show. This is just, I just happen to love it. I don't
Sure.
represent anyone but I'm a big fan of the musical Maybe Happy Ending.
Oh, I don't know that one. I gotta
Um,
write that down.
it's a small little musical with only four actors, and really there's two main, actors and then two others. Such a beautiful show. It got me emotional. I got teared up. It's a futuristic show. It's about these robots that fall in love with each other.
Oh,
And,
interesting.
just based on that, you might think, oh, it sounds really silly, but it's really moving. It's a really moving show. And so that's terrific. The play, I'm just trying to think, the play Purpose.
Mm-hmm. I've
Purpose
heard
is fabulous.
I've heard good things about that one. Yeah.
John Proctor is the villain. Have you heard about that?
No, I don't
That
know.
John Proctor is the villain, which is sort of a modern day take on The Crucible.
Uh-huh.
What else? Let me think.
That's pretty good. That's a good list,
Yeah,
just to
there are many others. I mean, there were some really great productions in this last year. I mean, yeah. You know what I loved was Just in Time with Jonathan Groff.
Yes. Yes.
That was fabulous.
Nice.
I mean, then then there's sort of the longer running, there's the big mega hit shows. I mean, like Hamilton and Wicked
Of
and
course. Yeah.
Hell's Kitchen, which
Hmm.
I think that opened 2 seasons ago, if I'm
Yeah.
correct. That's the Alicia Keys musical.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
That's that's another one that I loved. I mean,
Yeah.
it's great. I mean, you're making me think this isn't not really related to the question you asked, but this is another thing that is, as much as I love this industry, it's, there are parts of it that are frustrating in that the developmental process to get it, to get a show at least up and running on Broadway. It's very long and
Of
very
course.
expensive, and especially if you're creating a brand new piece, a brand new musical, and if you're creating a musical that's based on an underlying property, based on
Mm.
a movie or based on a book.
Sure.
And this is where, as a lawyer, this is, the first thing that you have to do is go get the rights from the movie studio or from the book owner, the book, author or publisher.
Sure.
And, that takes time. It can take months or even, years to negotiate that deal.
Yeah.
And then if you're fortunate enough to finish that deal and you get the rights from the movie studio to create a musical adaptation of some famous Hollywood movie, then you've got to find the writers, the people that are going to write the musical adaptation, and you negotiate a deal with their agents or lawyers. They write it, and then there's a developmental process where you might have readings and workshops. You do an out of town developmental production, outside of New York at a not for profit or regional theater. And so, I mean, the process, it's not unheard of for this whole process to take 5 to 10, even 10 years. And it takes a long time. And the cost of producing a Broadway musical, since the pandemic, it costs for Broadway musicals have really skyrocketed. For dramatic plays as well, but musicals, I'm getting a little off topic here, sorry, but
This is fine.
but I mean, it's become really expensive. I mean, the
Yeah.
cost to produce a Broadway musical now is really, you're looking at anywhere from 20 to 30 or 35 million.
Yeah.
Compared to a big blockbuster Hollywood movie, that's not a lot, but that is a lot of money for in the world of theater.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is. I just told students today that, if you think of it, it's important that they know that that kind of thing takes time. But also that I told them today in class, or at one of the classes I teach, that their classmates today are their collaborators tomorrow.
Hmm.
That I used to often just dream of working with, like I mentioned Robin Wagner earlier. So like I used to dream of working with a designer like that, but really what I found the most satisfaction doing was collaborating with people my age and doing theater and telling stories and trying to,
Hmm.
like I said, change hearts and minds, and wondering the entire time what the conversation on the ride home was going to be. But you make a good point that kind of thing takes a lot of time and could go on for quite a while. But and come with expenses, obviously, as well. This has
Right.
been really, really exciting to talk to you about all of this stuff, and I really appreciate your time devoted to really trying to, as I say in class, make hope visible for our students. Yes, it's great. It's so great to chat with you, and thank you for your time. I know you're a really busy guy, and those of us at WashU, Sean included, we're very, very grateful to alums like yourself who want to pay it forward, I guess is what the term might be. But
Well,
we appreciate that.
that is the term, and I'm just delighted to be a part of this.
It's good to talk to you, Michael. And again, thank you for your generosity of time here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks a lot. Okay.
All right. My many, many, many thanks to Mr. Michael Sinder for joining the PAD podcast. If you are listening and thinking to yourself, golly, maybe you don't say golly to yourself, but I do. Golly, I wish I was a PAD podcast guest. I have some wisdom to impart to prospective and current WashU students. I want to reach out to Rob Morgan, and you should. Please reach out to me. rmorgan at Woostle is the email, .edu, of course. But reach out if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, and thank you for listening.